All right, Connor, can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Yep.
Great. Okay, I think we're going to get ready to start kicking this off. Get ready to go. So, on behalf of Richard, myself, Jerome, and Michael, we'd like to thank you for attending our second annual Social Security Income Strategy Session hosted by Signet Strategic Wealth Management and our partners BlackRock. Today, we will be having Connor McRoy discuss with us different ideas and strategies around withdrawing from Social Security and what may be an optimal way to look at your benefits. As always, this is not a conversation around the solvency of Social Security, and please save all of your questions until the end of the webinar. That being said, I'd like to introduce Connor today. Connor, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us about this again. I know last year was really fun, and looking forward to see if there are any updates this year and to let everyone know what they can do when looking at their Social Security benefits. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And Social Security being a fun topic is certainly a compliment. So thanks everyone for joining us as well today. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy and making the best of the current situation as well too. As Chris mentioned, my name is Connor McRoy. I've been with BlackRock for at this point 9 years. Really glad to be with you today and also proud to work for the firm that I work for. We spend our time, if you've heard from me before, really partnering with the best financial advice firms in the industry, and especially in my region of Greater Los Angeles, of which Signet Wealth is certainly one of those. And we assist with a number of different things, from investment portfolio building, risk management, financial technology, all of which Signet Wealth has utilized from BlackRock. But also we do spend a fair amount of time on client education around really key financial planning subjects, and Social Security is really close to the top of that list as well too. And we're making our way through a pretty incredibly volatile year in a good way, but times are certainly uncertain is the word I hear so often from our very smartest minds and clients that we talk to. I would imagine more questions are arising about your current financial plan. Important questions to ask around asset allocation, insurance needs, income replacement in retirement. And today, we would like to share insight into one of the most powerful, but oftentimes most misunderstood tools that you have in retirement and at your disposal, which is Social Security benefits. And importantly, trying to get the most out of Social Security as you possibly can per your situation. And what I'll try to do in the next 30 or so minutes is first of all, just provide an overview of the Social Security rules that are in place. They change often. We'll try to give you a good overview about what to look for. Secondly, we'll provide some probably much needed clarity around what you can actually do. So potential collection strategies, and also just talk through some examples about things to think about when you ultimately sit down with the team at Signet Wealth and Chris to talk through your current situation as well too. And then lastly, we will leave you with some pretty actionable takeaway around how do you take the insights that you hear today and actually apply them to your current situation as well too. We have some actionable tools and follow-up information that can be really helpful for turning thoughts that you hear today into actual collection strategies for you and your spouse in retirement as well too. And getting started here, as we're all probably well aware of, even with the current health scare over the last couple of years, medical advances and healthier lifestyles across the globe are really increasing every one of our longevity in life, which is undoubtedly a good thing. We actually believe that the current pandemic is only going to exaggerate this trend and lead to an even more increased focus on public health and safety and tremendous support for medical advances to ultimately, hopefully, forbid this from ever happening again. And on the screen, what we're really trying to highlight here is life expectancies. And what you're basically seeing is that upon retirement at age 65, we're looking at a quote unquote healthy male and female couple and the expectancy of how long each of them will live. And you'll see at the very top here, a male at age 65 today currently has a 25% chance of living to age 93. A female age 65 today currently has a 25% chance of living to 96. But from a couple standpoint, you'll see that a couple, male and female of age 65 today, currently have a 50% chance of living to age 93 and a 25% chance that one person in that relationship lives to around age 98 or almost even 100. So that to us is all good news. But what it does do as we live longer, it puts a little bit more increased stress on our retirement income picture. And that can be really challenging, especially where bond rates are today, is if we're living longer, how do we supplement our income for a longer period of time? And frankly, Social Security is one of the very few things out there that gives you a very good picture of what you can expect in retirement income as well too. But the major challenge we see today is not necessarily that we're living longer, but as part of that, even though folks are living longer today, on average, we see 70% of people in the country collecting Social Security at a reduced benefit today because they took their benefit early. So, we ask ourselves, why do people take early to sacrifice benefits even though they're expected to live longer? The answer to us is probably because they can and probably because they're tired of waiting. You pay so long into Social Security, which we'll talk about some of those numbers here in a second, but most folks tell us, well, as soon as I turn age where I can collect, I want to take it because I haven't seen anything for 35 to 40 years. And that is certainly an option. It's oftentimes not the best option for long periods of time, but it is an option nonetheless. But I would say the bottom line here is that longevity risk is a very real thing in the world today. And taking benefits early oftentimes leave a lot of retirement benefits on the table for a longer period of time. And if you think about it this way, at the end of 2018, 2.1 million people in the US were over the age of 90 and taking Social Security benefits. And nearly 70,000 people in the country were taking Social Security benefits that were over the age of 100. So again, people are living longer, which means we have to be that much more thoughtful about when we take and how we take as a couple as well too. So we'll talk through really quickly just a couple of the kind of the rules of the road when it comes to retirement benefits and specifically individual benefits. The first big thing to talk through is, how are your benefits even calculated? How do you know what you're entitled to? And this document here, I'm sure Chris and the team at Cigna have seen a number of these documents, but this is an important one. This really talks through your earnings record. It talks through how much your Social Security tracked earnings were over your life cycle, and ultimately helps us calculate what you're entitled to. So currently, individuals who are paying FICA taxes age 60 or over should be receiving this benefits document in the mail about 3 months before their birthday. This will include a page that looks like this, of course, that's your earnings record. It's page 3. And you really want to check this carefully. So in the top left, you do have the opportunity to go back to Social Security and say that you guys have gotten this wrong. But your earnings record takes your best 35 years of earnings over your life cycle. And that is the direct input to calculate what are you entitled to when you start collecting benefits. So that's a really important one to certainly get right from that standpoint. If you haven't received this document in the mail or you've misplaced it, you can log on to ssa.gov at any time to really access this on demand virtually as opposed to a hard copy. But again, one thing to note, be sure to look through the top left, your earnings record. It's your best 35 years. If you feel Social Security's gotten it wrong, which they have before, be sure to have a conversation about that to ultimately resolve those issues, because again, that is how your benefits calculated. Go ahead, Chris.
May I ask you a quick question, please? In regards to looking on the left, what about if you're already taking Social Security? So let's say someone has already taken Social Security and they discover that all of a sudden their benefit has been incorrectly calculated. One, once you've taken it, can you go back and make that request? And two, are there arrearages? Does then Social Security look at it and say, hey, you're right, you should have been getting this much all along? Or is it just a, hey, too bad you already took it? I'm curious.
It's a good question. It's not one that we get often, but if you've already started taking benefits and you notice that there's a problem with this, that's an immediate call to Social Security, and they can hopefully help you resolve it.
Okay.
Oftentimes, if you've already taken for a long time, there's probably very little that they're willing to do. But I would say, which is a point that you kind of beat me to, Chris, but later on, we will talk about if you feel like you've made a mistake in taking at the wrong time, you do have the opportunity for what we would call just frankly a do-over, where you can stop taking Social Security and kind of reset your collection strategy, which we'll get to here in just a few minutes.
You got it. Thank you.
Of course. Page 2 on this document is also important. It will specifically talk about what are you entitled to and when. It'll talk through your full retirement age benefit per month. It'll talk about if you wait until age 70, what your benefit is. And then it'll also talk about if you take early at age 62, what that benefit number as well is too. And just an FYI, the maximum Social Security benefit per month for a worker that reached full retirement age in 2020 is just over $3,000 per month. So again, it's real dollars we're talking about. This is absolutely something that you certainly want to get right. The big question is, when do you start to take? And this is probably the question on everybody's mind. The first thing, which we'll talk about a bunch over the next 20 minutes or so, is it's a family decision. This is not an individual decision for each person. We have to think about Social Security benefits as a total family benefit so that we can really utilize all the rules in Social Security to our benefit longer periods of time. And if you're thinking about from your standpoint alone, your decision to collect, this teeter-totter visual is the most helpful. It's very important. You have the option to take your benefits anytime between age 62 and age 70, but when you take in that 8-year period is very important. Think about your full retirement age, which is likely somewhere between 66 and 70, as the middle of the seesaw. If you start to take benefits anytime before your full retirement age, you will sacrifice something. And you will file for reduced benefits, reduced individual benefits, I should say. Your primary insurance amount is what you're entitled to at full retirement age. And then anything you take after your full retirement age, you'll actually be entitled to more benefits. So for example, if you're entitled to $1,000 at your full retirement age, if you start to take at 62, you won't get the full $1,000 per month. And if you start to take at age 70, you'll get more than $1,000 per month. So you can see there is, if you're a healthy individual and you plan on living a long time, which I hope we all do, age 70, if you can wait that long, it can be a long-term benefit to you specifically. And if you're thinking about, well, what is my full retirement age? Very easy. It just depends on the year you're born. If you're born in 1937 or earlier, your full retirement age is at 65. Most on this call, I would imagine, are probably born somewhere between 1943 or later. From 43 to 54, if that's your birth year, your full retirement age is 66. And anything 1960 or later is full retirement age of 67 at this point in time. The next thing to mention is sometimes folks ask in conjunction with that teeter-totter, well, if I start to take benefits early, well, how much do I get penalized for that? And this visual is the most helpful, just to get an idea as to how much do you actually leave on the table. So again, if you're thinking through the right-hand side of this page, full retirement age is the full allotment. You get 100% of what you're entitled to, not a penny less, not a penny more. If you start to take a year early, you get 93% of your benefit. If you start to take 5 years early, call it 62, as soon as you can collect, you'll only receive about 70 cents on the dollar. You'll sacrifice 30% of your benefits on a monthly basis for the entirety of your life. So again, it's not to say by any stretch of the imagination that taking early is the wrong thing to do. We just have to be very thoughtful about how do we take early? Is it the right thing to do based on your life expectancy, et cetera? Or frankly, just your need or want for the current retirement income. So again, it's not a right or wrong conversation. It's just being aware of how much are we willing to sacrifice, how long are we willing to wait, and making that decision as effectively as humanly possible. There are some considerations when you're thinking through that decision about collecting benefits early. This visual starts to give you just some ideas to think about and really have a conversation with Chris and the Signet Wealth team about your specific situation as a family. One decision or one consideration is, are you continuing to work after you collect? Especially and really exclusively if you're taking early and still working, there's a penalty for that as well too, which we'll talk about here in just a second. The second big one, which we don't have the answer to, nobody does, but it's a huge thing that we need to get right from an estimation standpoint, is how long do we plan to live? Your longevity, family health history has a big part of that. Your own current health, of course, is important. The longevity is probably the most important factor. And then lastly, which we haven't talked about yet, but we'll talk about here in just a minute, your spouse's picture. Again, if you're married, whether you're divorced or currently married, your spouse's picture has a very meaningful impact on your decision as well too as a family. So you want to make this as much a group decision as it is an individual decision as well too. And that working portion of that previous slide comes up a lot. Social Security was built to supplement retirement income and really replace it. So Social Security, the administration really wants you to be retired when you are taking benefits. Therefore, if you are going to take benefits early and continue to work, there will be penalties and some reductions for that as well too. And they call it the earnings limit. So for example, if you want to take early under your full retirement age, as you see on the left-hand side of the page, there is a limit to how much money you can make in a given year before they will start to take benefits away from you. In 2021, that limit is close to $19,000 a year. So if you make more than $19,000 a year at your job and you take benefits early, Social Security will take $1 and hold it back for every $2 you are above the earnings limit as a penalty. If it's the year that you reach full retirement age, so for example, if you're 65 and less than 12 months away from your Social Security full retirement age, that earnings limit jumps up to about almost $51,000 per year. And in that case, they will take $1 of benefits for every $3 that you are above the earnings limit. So it's a little bit less severe, but still real money. And of course, the month that you turn full retirement age and every time period after that, there is no earnings limit. If you are still working after you turn 66 or 67, it doesn't matter. You can use Social Security on top of your current income as well too, which can be a really nice tool to really add kind of double income for your family as well too. This is one thing that Chris mentioned early. If you see mistakes on your earnings record, certainly try to fix them. If you or somebody that you think made a bad decision and they want to change their mind about when they took, you do have the ability to do it over again. We have some people that have taken too early, haven't really been happy with their decision, and they wanted to basically reset their collection. There are situations where you can do that. So if you've started taking benefits within the last 12 months, so within a year, and you feel like you don't really need the money, or you took it too early, you don't want to sacrifice the benefits, you can actually reverse your decision, and Chris and his team can certainly help you with that. You can only do this once. You have to repay all the benefits that you've received back to Social Security, but you have essentially reset your collection picture. And that, again, if you feel like you've gotten it wrong and you've recently made this decision, you do have the ability to reverse that as well too. And that to us is a useful tool to make sure that you ultimately get it right. So the other side of this fence, so again, we start to talk about the painful stuff first, which is money being taken away from you. Now let's talk about the stuff that hopefully is refreshing and good news, which is you theoretically get paid more for taking benefits later. And on the other side of this fence is waiting or delaying benefits beyond your full retirement age. And it would make sense because you get paid more. So again, if you're thinking through that previous bar chart where everything to the left of full retirement age was a reduced number, now we're really filling in the gaps of that teeter-totter where everything to the right of full retirement age is you get paid more. So full retirement age, again, 66 or 67, likely somewhere between those two numbers or ages, you get everything you're entitled to. If you wait a year to 4 years up until age 70, your benefit actually increases by 8% a year. So while you're not actually receiving the checks, when you start to turn those benefits on, that monthly income will have increased by 8 to sometimes 32%, depending on how long you wait. So people often want to take as early as possible because they've been paying into Social Security for so long. Sometimes if you have the ability to, from an income standpoint, from a longevity standpoint, to wait up until age 70, those benefits can be much, much larger when you ultimately turn those on as well too. Again, one of the most important decisions in terms of taking early versus taking later is longevity. We don't know the answer to that. We wish we did. Well, maybe you don't, but from this standpoint, it'd be really nice to know about when your longevity picture actually and what that looks like. It's certainly impossible to know, but what we can do is start to run some analysis on what makes most sense for what we think is going to happen. What do we need from an income standpoint? What do we think from a life expectancy and health standpoint? Now we can start to make some educated decisions. So this first line chart here really shows the age across the bottom, the amount of benefits increasing as we move in age, of course, taking Social Security. And this orange line is really just showing you, let's just take as early as possible to age 62. If we factor in taking on time or at full retirement age, we don't sacrifice 25% of our benefits, as you see at the bottom there. We don't make as much money as early on, but over longer periods of time, we actually do start to quote unquote outperform taking early. And that break-even analysis hits for this person or this example at age 78. The last line that people love to see is maximum benefits, which is if we wait for our own individual purposes at age 70, now we start to see that break even shift a little bit longer. But at age 82 and a half, if you live any time beyond 82, which statistics would say that you probably are going to, waiting until age 70 is the most advantageous from a benefit amount alone and that perspective as well too. So this is a very straightforward visual. It's also probably the most important because some folks, unfortunately, are in poor health. Age 62 might not make sense for someone in great health, but if you want to maximize benefits early on, age 62 can make a great deal of sense. This is also a straightforward visual as it only factors in one person. And what I would say is, again, group and family decision, as you start to include multiple people in this analysis, now we start to see the benefits of some of the analysis that we can provide and help you and the team at Signet Wealth actually start to digest a little bit further as to when should we collect, when should my wife or husband collect. Those are the types of conversations that we have around break evens and longevity as well too. So if we could, I'll spend maybe the next 10 to 15 minutes on just some examples. And to this point, we've really only talked about one person. Now, the other big variable in this situation is what does your spouse make and what are they entitled to from a Social Security standpoint as well too. Hopefully some of these examples can start to really paint the picture of how we start to incorporate spousal benefits into these discussions as well too. So if you take a couple, Jordan and Alex, let's say Jordan has a primary insurance amount or is entitled to $2,200 per month whenever they retire. And then Alex, let's say, was not an earner at all, is entitled to $0 in Social Security when they retire as well too, quote unquote. The question we always get asked from folks that don't have a earnings record is, am I entitled to anything if I haven't earned any money? And the answer is not from an individual standpoint, but from a spousal standpoint, absolutely. And a spousal benefit is a very easy calculation. You're entitled to half of your spouse's benefit number, which I'm not a math expert, but that's an easy one for me. So if Jordan's entitled to $2,200 a month, Alex as a spouse is entitled to $1,100 a month. And the way that works from a collection strategy standpoint is, if we use this example and Jordan takes their benefit on time at full retirement age, they will receive $2,200 a month from Social Security off of Jordan's record. And then at that point in time, Alex is entitled to a spousal benefit off of Jordan at $1,100 a month for the rest of their life as well too. So you can now start to see, just because you don't have an earnings record doesn't mean you're out of this conversation. Spousal benefits is real money, and it needs to be included in these analysis as well too, which again, Chris and the team over at Signet Wealth are your resources for that. They can really help you get this right. Absolutely. Another example, it's really important to understand that your spousal benefit is always 50% of your spouse's monthly earning primary insurance amount. It's not the amount that's actually being collected. So for example, if Jordan takes their benefit early at age 62 and you take spousal benefits on time, you are still entitled to the entire allotment of your spousal benefit, even though your spouse took a smaller number in Social Security. And we see that a lot. We see somebody that's yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry. I have a quick question for you. And this is relevant to a lot of California clients. In situations where you have a spouse who has worked and paid into Social Security their whole life, and then another spouse who, let's say, went into a public program like LaSera, they've been a teacher their entire life. And so now they're in a completely different system. Is that person still entitled to a spousal benefit, even though because of the GPO and Social Security, they may not be entitled to an actual Social Security benefit?
It's a great question, and the answer is yes. They are still entitled to Social Security and spousal benefits. Oftentimes, the pension offsets sometimes all of those benefits, but we run government pension offset analysis as well too.
Great.
So if you're entitled to a pension, let us know, and we can factor that into these analysis. And we have folks within BlackRock that are readily available to your team, Chris, that used to work at Social Security, and they can talk to individuals about the rules and about what they're entitled to through Social Security. So that resource is always available to anybody on the call.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Of course. The last thing I'll mention when it comes to just spousal benefits in isolation is, much like individual benefits, if you take spousal benefits early, they come at a reduced amount. So for example, if you take them 5 years earlier, as soon as you can at age 62 when your spouse collects, you'd be only entitled to about 65% of your spousal benefit. So again, that's real money being left on the table, as you can see from previous visuals. You'd be losing somewhat close to 40 to 50% of your benefit, depending on what time you take it. One thing to note about spousal benefits, unlike individual benefits, is that they don't increase. Your spousal benefit will be the same at full retirement age as it will be at age 70. So it makes no sense to delay the gratification of spousal benefits beyond your full retirement age. If you've reached full retirement age and your spouse is collecting benefits, you should have absolutely turned on your spousal benefits if it makes sense for your picture as well too. The second really important thing about spousal benefits, then we'll move on to maybe another type of benefits as well too quickly, is you can only take spousal benefits when your spouse collects. I think I've alluded to that a couple of times, but for example, same couple here, Jordan and Alex, if Jordan elects to wait until age 70 to take their individual benefit to let it increase, Alex cannot turn on their benefit until that happens. So you cannot take spousal benefits until your spouse is collecting their individual benefit, which is a lot of words basically to say that in order to take spousal, your spouse has to be collecting their own individual. So it's important to know that as well too. The next slide I want to talk through really quickly here is, is this one here, which really starts to talk about is we've done these examples to this point as Alex as a zero income earner, so not entitled to an individual benefit. When both spouses have an earnings record, it's a good problem to have, but it does add some complexity into the situation as well too. So now, for example, your own individual benefits start to play a factor in this as a spouse and the lower earner in this case as well too. So for example, if Alex is entitled to $600 at full retirement age, those same types of reductions and increases apply to their own individual benefit. But what's different about this is there's now a cap on how much they can receive. $1,100 is the spousal benefit. $600 is the individual benefit. Your cap in terms of what your Social Security maximum allotment is per month is the larger of those two numbers. In this case, it's the spousal benefit number at $1,100. But we say all that just to mention that it would be really nice to add $600 to $1,100 to make $1,800 a month. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. There is now a cap on how much you can take through Social Security. And in this case, the own benefit is $600. The spousal benefit will be $500 to really reach that $1,100 cap. So the good news is you'd be receiving more than your own individual benefit or your spouse would. The bad news is you can't just tack these benefits on top of each other and add them up. There is a maximum allotment per. The other thing that's important as well too is whether you take early or later, that cap still applies, and very important that the reduction still applies as well too. So for example, if you take your own individual benefit early and your spousal benefit early on top of it, there will be a reduction and a difference between what you actually get from Social Security versus what your allotment is. You can see that $300 difference here. The other big thing to note as well too is that cap still applies if you wait and delay benefits as well too. So for example, if you delay your individual benefit until age 70, there's still going to be that cap at $1,100. So in this case, it really wouldn't make a heck of a lot of sense to do that, because you're still going to reach that $1,100 limit as well too. The last part of the picture I want to talk about pretty quickly here is survivor benefits as well too. And survivor benefits are often the most overlooked that we find, and it can be a really big difference in somebody's retirement income picture as well too. So I do want to make sure that everybody knows that survivor benefits are basically just whatever your spouse was collecting at the time that they pass away. That is typically what your survivor benefit number is. So for example, in this case, this top visual here, if this person, Jordan, was taking their individual benefit at 63 and 6 months is when they filed for it, their individual benefit number would be basically $1,800 a month. That is what their survivor benefit would basically be if Jordan was to unfortunately pass away. The other difference is if Jordan starts taking their individual benefit at age 70, that would be close to $2,900 a month. The survivor benefit is going to grow and be that exact same number as well too, depending on when that person was taking. So again, there's a lot of benefits that are being thrown around here. The big ones to pay attention to are individual benefit, spousal benefit, and how those two grow and work with each other. And then ultimately, if and when the time comes, the survivor benefit needs to be part of that discussion as well too, based on life expectancy and how we can already start to plan for some of those things so that both spouses are taken care of long after the other one's gone. The last thing I'll share with you, and I'll kind of wrap it up here in just a second, I'll share two things really quickly, and sorry to jump through a bunch of slides here. It's just a lot more examples that are certainly important, but there are individual benefits to start to consider as well too. One is unmarried child and a younger spouse. You want to be cognizant of how children can be basically taken care of through Social Security benefits as well too. It's certainly important to kind of think through those as well too, especially If you have a disabled child, those situations come up, unfortunately, sometimes, and Social Security benefits can help with a disabled or disability benefits as well, too. That's something that we can certainly help you think through as well. And then if I was to leave everybody with a couple of pieces on divorced spousal benefits as well, this is typically overlooked very often, as some folks have ex-spouses. You can file for spousal benefits if you are currently unmarried, but you were previously married. There are some qualifications to that. If you are married to that person for 10 or more years, if you are currently unmarried and haven't remarried, that's a big one as well, too. And if both of you are age 62 or older, you can actually take spousal benefits off of your previous spouse as well, too. So I know it's a little bit of an oh, by the way, but it's certainly something to think through if you have an ex-spouse and you'd like to think about spousal benefits off of that person as well, too, as part of your Social Security income picture as well. The last thing I'll leave everybody with really quickly, and we can talk about some of the taxation stuff if you have questions on that, but when it comes to next steps, there's a couple of things that I would certainly recommend, and Chris and the Signet Wealth team can be a great resource for it. The first is look at your statement. If you haven't looked at it in a while and you want to fact check that and just get an idea of what you're entitled to when, SSA.gov, you can download that information at any point in time. The second piece of information is meet with Chris, meet with Richard, Jerome, or Michael to really think through your current picture and some of the options that you have at your disposal. And then the last piece of this equation here is Social Security should be incorporated into your broader financial plan. It's a tool for retirement income. It should be an integral part of your overall financial plan and your long-term income picture that I think we can help with. And I'll leave, Chris, I'll share this document pretty quickly here, and hopefully it loads up for you. But this tool here, if you can see this okay, I'm going to share my screen again. But if you're curious on where to start or some of the information that Chris and his team would need to run these type of analysis for you, we have a tool that does a really great job of building customized analysis very quickly for you. But we'll send this along. And if you're interested in learning more about your specific customized picture, if you provide a couple of pieces of information, which I'm sure Chris can help with, we can really build some of these customized reports for any individual or couple that we work with, and we'd be happy to do that as well too. So with that, I know that's a lot of information. I hope I gave a decent overview on all those different items that you have at your disposal. I'm happy to stick around for some questions, and I'll turn it to Chris to facilitate those.
Connor, thank you so much. As always, that was excellent. A ton of information in that. I'm sure I'm going to have more questions for you. Actually, I've got a few for you that have come in during the presentation. I also want to make sure that you get that PDF to us. I know last time we did this last year, a lot of people wanted to run that analysis. I thought it was incredible, some of the output that we're getting of it. Some of it's changed plans for clients. So looking forward to getting that out to everyone after this. The questions I have are as follows. One, in regards to collecting Social Security, someone asked if someone's already collecting disability, let's say, and then they become 65, 66, do they flip over to Social Security? Do they stay on disability? How does that work?
It's all part of the same picture, and it's a good question. Disability benefits can sometimes offset Social Security benefits, so it is really important to make sure that when you do become full retirement age, you are factoring those things into the total equation. Because
Okay.
What won't happen, we can promise you, is that if you turn full retirement age and you're already taking disability benefits, those will not be automatically added. You'd actually have to file for Social Security. And of course, the Social Security Administration doesn't do that for you. So you do want to be aware of when you turn full retirement age and how much Social Security additional benefits you can get on top of disability. But it's a great question.
Great, thank you. The second question is regard to the spousal benefit. So you had mentioned that if you have a previous spouse from a previous lifetime, you were married and divorced, they're eligible to receive the benefit. But what about for the person who is remarried? Does their current spouse and the previous spouse, are they both able to claim that benefit, or is it just for one? How does that work?
Yeah, so if you have remarried, that's the other part of those divorced spousal, you would be entitled to spousal benefits off of your current spouse. So as opposed to being able to take off of your ex-spouse, you are now entitled to take Social Security or spousal benefits off of your current spouse. And I think the requirement for that is if you're married for a year.
Okay. Are you eligible to choose, or is it one or the other? For example, and I'm asking this because in California, it's a very big topic, right? Let's say you've been married you've remarried, you've started a new life with someone over a year. Are you able to look back and say, previously there was this benefit out there, but you know what I mean? Do you pick and choose, or is it a 1-year clock and then you're just on the current spouse?
It's a good question. And unfortunately, you don't have your pick of the litter. If you've remarried, you're really just kind of locked into your current spouse's benefits from a spousal standpoint. But you do bring up a good point. If you have remarried or if you've divorced multiple times, then you do have an opportunity to, if you've had basically 2 marriages longer than 10 years, which is somewhat uncommon, but you can look at basically both ex-spouses' records and kind of choose between the two.
I believe in California that's called the Johnny Carson rule, isn't it? I've heard something like that in the past, right? In regards to more question and answers, I do have one. With the current legislation before Congress, so we did have a change in 2017, updating some of the code around Social Security, altering file and suspend, I believe. Is there anything coming up with recent negotiations in Congress and all the and all the other bills coming up that appears to be changing Social Security yet again, or does BlackRock and you and everyone feel like the changes that were made a few years ago are still in the process of implementation? We don't see anything in the near term to be concerned with regarding structural changes.
It's a really good question. So we do think there could be some structural changes to increase and basically broaden out the solvency of Social Security. The first and easy thing that is probably going to happen under the current administration is taxes can move higher, which helps Social Security. The second piece is the change of the full retirement age. And we've seen that once historically, where the retirement age at one point in time, I believe, was 65 for everybody. Now it's kind of tiered and it goes all the way to 67. Mm-hmm. We don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities to see a 68, 69, or 70 full retirement age in the future to increase the solvency. Sure. So that's certainly our thought. And then we do have a question from Jeanette that I do want to answer whenever you're ready for that as well.
I was just going to get to that one too. Yep. So and the question is that, one person's salary is twice their spouse's, but the spouse is 4 years older and will take benefits earlier than they will. So how does that affect their payments when you have that mismatch in ages and income?
It's a really good question, Jeanette. So this is a really good example of how sometimes these situations get a little bit complex because you're dealing with 2 different ages. Not everyone's born the same day, and you're dealing with 2 different incomes. Your situation is actually a pretty common one, and you do actually have a pretty good opportunity to really maximize the amount of benefits that you get. So for example, in this case, if you're earning more than your spouse, but you're also younger, sometimes the higher earner is actually better to take spousal benefits at their full retirement age. So for example, in this case, if your husband waits until age 70, you'd be 66 at that time. If he takes in this case, his individual benefit at age 70, at that time, you'll be 66, probably full retirement age. You have the ability to turn on your spousal benefit at that point in time without affecting your individual benefit. So you would basically be able to take spousal benefit from age 66 to age 70. And when you turn 70, your individual benefit would have grown those 4 years. So you can turn on your individual at that point in time. And then actually what would end up happening, because you're a higher earner, your husband would actually be able to take spousal benefits off of you when you turn on your individual at age 70, where he would be 74. I know that's a lot of numbers thrown out there, but
that's incredibly powerful. I'm going to replay this again, but I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So Jeanette, I'm glad you asked the question, but it's really just it's a good example of how most people in this case would basically say, well, I'll just take as soon as I can because I've earned more. And my husband, maybe he'll wait, maybe he'll take it on time because his is smaller. But you actually have a lot of different variables of spousal benefits that you can use at your disposal. So again, I would recommend getting some of those numbers to Chris. You guys can actually run the report and we'll build that situation in there where you can really just maximize those benefits.
That's great. That's excellent. Connor, we're going to be coming up on time very soon. I understand, we've got some stuff coming up. So I'm going to have to stop the questioning right there. If there's anyone in attendance today who has some more questions and we didn't get to it, as always, email them to me. I'll get them immediately to Connor and we'll get right back to you. As always, thank you for your time. Thank you, for your firm, your support. On behalf of Mike, Jerome, myself, and Richard, we want to thank everyone for attending today, and we look forward to talking to you in the near future. Thank you again, Connor, and take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.